Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to be on this meeting and have a chance to facilitate another meeting for the Climate Dialogues 2022 this time, as many things changed since the last time I had this chance to be part of this great event. My name is Teona Dalakishvili. If you participated in last year's meeting, you have probably already met me and remember me, and I would be happy to meet you again or meet the new people. This year, it's very important to host this event, especially because of all the changes that happen in the world geopolitically, and to discuss what kind of influence these changes can have on our life and on the issues that are concerning the climate. So we have already had our first meeting on October 5th. Today is our second webinar, and we will have one more meeting on October 9th. And today's topic is heating solutions beyond fossil fuels and energy independence. We have great speakers that will speak today, two speakers who will speak about this topic from different perspectives. But before we move to this topic, I also want to go through some technicalities. So as you probably already know, especially if you have attended the last meeting, the main language for our webinar will be English, but we will have a simultaneous translation. So I would already advise you to actually choose the interpretation. So you can find the globe button or the interpretation button in some cases and choose the language that is more comfortable for you. Yes, and also, of course, we would be happy to know who is here. And therefore, to get to know you better, we would like to ask you to use the chat, and you are very welcome to use the chat for most of the communication, and type your answer into the chat. Where are you from? Which country do you represent? What is your position? What are you doing at the moment? What is your main occupation? And also, please let us know which climate energy topics have you been working on. So we would be expecting you now sharing short information about yourself, so we can also understand like what is the representation of different countries in our group. Some people are still joining us. I still see people joining the meeting. So for those who joined right now, the question is to present yourself. We would like to ask you to present yourself and to present yourself in the chat and to write where are you from, what is your position, and which climate energy topics have you been working on. I already see Olya greeting everyone from Kiev. And yes, you're very welcome to share about yourself, and the others can also, of course, read who is here. Hi, Armine. So we have Georgia, we have Armenia, we have Ukraine. I see already in the list a wide diversity of the countries. We have Germany, we have Kyrgyzstan. Very nice, and you are very welcome. So I also want to follow with the technicalities. While you are presenting yourself in the chat, please, again, I'm welcoming everybody to write in the chat who is here. We have like 2 slides about how we will be running this session. So first slide is about the way we discuss. We understand that we are not in the easiest position while running this webinars and the meetings. So we would like to have few agreements with you on how we will actually discuss different topics. So first thing is to please communicate respectfully. We are a group of people who have met before, who worked together before. So I'm sure that we can keep this agreement of always leading the dialogue in the respectful way. Please appreciate different perspectives and appreciate that people here come from different stories and they can be representing different perspectives. And please try to stick to the topic. Here, I also want to say that on the next meeting, which is on October 19th, there will be much more space also for the discussion. Of course, we will also have a discussion today, but these discussions are very, very topic oriented. And I would like to ask you to always try to come back to the topic, but we will also have a more group work and more interactive parts on our third meeting. So you're also very welcome to join. And another slide about the technicalities. So we would like to ask you to keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. If you are speaking or you have a question, of course, you can raise your hand and then either ask the question in the chat or raise your hand and ask your question by unmuting your microphone. Raising the hand will actually give us the chance to know who is in the line for the questions. And please, if you have any technical question or technical difficulty, including any difficulty with the translation or choosing the channel, please write in the chat so me and my colleagues can actually assist you. And while all of you are presenting yourself, and I'm really happy to see so many people from so many different countries, I want to give word to Olia Boyko, who is the coordinator of CAN EECCA. Olia, please.
Thank you, Tiona. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. I just want to say that this webinar today, this meeting, is part of a series of meetings. We decided to restart our climate dialogues this year with a series of 3 meetings about basically the future of our region, but with the energy and climate perspective. So on the first webinar 1 week ago, we discussed the impacts of the Russian war on Ukraine on the energy policy in the region. And today we are getting more concrete about what the future holds. How do we actually phase out fossil fuels, but also do not freeze during the winter? And the next webinar next week, exactly the same time, also on Wednesday, is gonna cover the topics of climate justice. So basically the gender perspective to this whole energy transition that we are discussing. So this is a little bit about, this and that, but the main thing that we are doing right now is, as I said, we are restarting this project. We are reconnecting with you. We had many plans for this year. Unfortunately, they did not all go as we planned. And now we need to understand how to stay connected with you, because the Climate Dialogues in its principle is a project about finding experts on different climate and energy topics in the region of Eastern Europe, Caucasus, and Central Asia, finding those experts and connecting them in whatever is relevant for them, actually. So last year we created joint positions, we wrote joint papers, organized meetings, etc. This year, well, right now we are kind of we want to introduce you to each other again. So hopefully next year we have more to give you than just online meetings, but I also appreciate that you join and that you are interested in this humble format of a webinar. So yes, stay connected, and we're really happy to hear from you this time, like your perspective as well. So please don't be shy in the chat. There will be time to ask questions, because as I said, we are connecting experts, not just people who come to listen to experts, but I'm sure you have a lot to say as well on the topic. Thank you so much. And yeah, let's move to our first speaker.
Thank you, Olia, very much. So I would like to shortly go through what we plan today. We have 1.5 hours for our meeting. We already had the opening words, and we are good in time so far. As I mentioned, we have 2 speakers. The first speaker will speak about the realistic solutions for heating to be implemented in the region. It's Oksana Gudakova, who is representing the Unison Group. For each speaker, there will be a presentation, but then after every speaker, there will be 10 minutes for the question and answers, 15 minutes for the questions and answers. So there will be also a heating discussion. So, and we have also prepared some questions for you. And then we have the next speaker who is representing the Avant-Garde Group. She's a director of the Avant-Garde Group, Alexandra Novikova, and she will speak about how not to freeze in winter. And she will also speak about the research that was discussed during the last meeting. After that, we will also have a open discussion, and then we will close this meeting and invite you for the next one, which was already mentioned a few times, that this is a second meeting and not the last meeting. Then you will also have a chance to join the other one. So I would be really happy if you actively participate in the discussion. As mentioned, for the discussion, you can already prepare your questions while the presenters will be speaking, and then you can either ask your questions or also write in the chat. And yes, I give now a word to our first speaker, Oksana Gudkova, who is the engineer at the Unison Group. And Oksana, welcome. And we're really happy to have you here to share some of the insights of your work, and also mainly like of covering the topic from the perspective of the Central Asia, because as you say, we have many participants from the region.
Всем здравствуйте, меня зовут Оксана.
So good morning, my name is Oksana and I am the engineer of Unison Group, and my specialty is the renewable energy sources. This is my specialty. So today we'd like to talk specifically about heating in the winter period without taking into consideration the fossil fuels, as we have the habit of using it every year, you know? How to actually go beyond it? Within the climate dialects, I guess the first thing that we should mention is that climate change itself is one of the biggest issues, current biggest issues. Why? Because we actually we have this colossal damage for environment, and we move closer to global warming, you know? Therefore, from the standpoint of Kyrgyzstan, I'd like to analyze this issue today. If we take it in general, 80% of fossil fuel, we use it in energy sector, and it mostly goes to heating process and primary energy types. So we have 2/3 of emissions. These are generated by coal, electricity, and gas. So the component of the energy that we use for heating specifically, in energy balance of Kyrgyzstan specifically, more than half it goes for coal. And as it's known, you know, according to the research from the global sources, in Kyrgyzstan, we have a lot of fossil fuels presented by coal, and the full phase out, you know, when we speak about coal, the full phase out currently is a little bit ambiguous. Can we refuse or not? We still have a couple years to find out if we can phase out, but coal burning is the key CO2 emission source in Kyrgyzstan today. The next slide. So Unison Group engineers estimates tell us that despite that we have a lot of fossil fuels, the full phase out currently from fossil fuels is not possible, because people need to get proper living conditions for everyone to stay warm in winter, warm and comfortable. But in Kyrgyzstan, we promote the energy efficiency agenda. We try to minimize the consumption of fossil fuels, mainly coal, by using the energy efficient solutions. So we have two possible options to decrease the CO2 emissions: traditional methods of integrating energy efficient solutions and alternative energy sources we'll talk later about. We can have the next slide, please. So regarding traditional methods, today, according to the estimates of the World Bank, our premises consume approximately 50% of all the energy of the Republic, you know? Therefore, out of this huge energy balance, the majority of premises are warmed by coal, gas, and electric energy. Taking this into consideration, our premises or buildings, they have a lot of heat losses because many buildings were built a long time ago and the materials which were used, the construction materials, are not energy efficient. Respectively, in this image, we can see the percentage for heat losses in the buildings during the whole period. So we lose heat, we lose energy, we lose electric energy and heat energy via the roof, via windows, via walls, via floor, via basements, and if we don't use energy efficient lighting, of course, we use the majority, we waste the majority of energy, and we can actually decrease the loss by, and respectively decreasing the CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. Please, the next slide. What energy efficient solutions in Kyrgyzstan are offered? Okay, the next slide, please. Yeah, so what energy efficient solutions do we offer? From the standpoint of energy efficiency for buildings, which consume the majority of energy, if it's not energy efficient, we offer to have the primary energy audit for the building, to run the audit and to see what percentage does it lose, how much energy it consumes, and how much does it lose, respectively. If during the energy audit performance, we see that the majority of energy is wasted by the walls, through the walls, or through the roof because of old non-energy efficient windows, therefore we offer the following. So we offered extra heating insulation with specific materials. Also the windows, we check it, offer some energy efficient windows to be installed, which will in winter keep the warmth, the heat inside the building with the sun energy consumed. Through the glass, the sunlight will penetrate and will keep the warmth, the heat inside the building, let's say. When it comes to the heating, we can use heat regulators, insulation for the pipes, and also integrate energy efficient solutions presented by alternative energy sources. When it comes to alternative energy sources, in Kyrgyzstan, and I think in Central Asia in total, this issue is quite important, you know, and this is quite popular. It's becoming popular. And it's becoming more and more popular. So many technologies today, there are like every day, these are improving, you know, even more. And you can notice that people use solar panels to ensure the electric energy supply. These solar collectors and heat pumps quite often are used as well. Different types of these we use, but heat pumps, the heat pumps which are able to maintain heat in the winter period by using less electricity compared to like electric heaters, traditional ones. And we can establish these collaborations and make systems fully independent from fossil fuels, traditional ones. For example, if we take the system where we'll have like an ordinary house, a simple house, heated with this heat pump, we all know that heat pump works with electric energy. Electric energy can be actually generated by solar panels during daytime, and the batteries at nighttime when we don't get enough solar energy. So solar panels will give us electricity, and this electricity will be used for a heat pump. And we can also install the solar collector in the system to get additional like amount of hot water in the system. And in general, this system may actually help us to become absolutely independent from traditional fossil fuels, and the system will be independent. In winter, we will not freeze, therefore, and if this is just an ordinary house, we can use energy efficient solutions like get extra insulation with special materials, and it will be more energy saving and cost saving in terms of energy efficiency.
And I think if we'll start the discussion of a complete renouncing of the fossil fuels, we will start using alternative energy resources, and we are going to use solar panels heat pumps and other equipments that would allow us to provide heating in the cold periods, in the cold seasons. So that's it from me. If you have any questions, please do ask them, and I'm here for you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oksana. We have the first question from Olga Sionova, and she is asking the following question. Electricity, electric energy, how is it generated? Through which resources? Well, in our region, this is a big electric power plant. We have cascade electric stations and hydroelectric stations. All of them are hydroelectric stations, like hydro power plants. Could I ask you another question then? Yes, please. Thank you very much for your speech. It is a very, very relevant subject. And I liked very much that you covered all of the possible specters of the alternative energy. But do you have any calculations for specific area, for specific house that would tell us how it would be possible to satisfy all of its needs? Well, as far as I know, unfortunately, we don't have such a plan for Kyrgyzstan, but we have houses that receive electric power from alternative energy sources, partially or up to 50%. For example, in Kyrgyzstan, we have Unison residents. This is housing residence. For example, here we are in the house, in the building that is completely autonomous. So we have solar panels for 6 kilowatts. We have sun collector that provides us with heating. And this is a system that helps us to provide heating for the cold season of the year. Also, we have the heating pump here. So this is the system that I actually presented to you. But because of the fact that in Kyrgyzstan area, as of today, we would say that it is too expensive, and for bigger amount of people, for larger amount of people, they are afraid of this term in which you have to pay first and then to wait for the return on this investment. So it is a very, very relevant topic, but it is so relevant until the moment when people actually see the prices. And together with this, we see that the trend is increasing. We see that people are coming to us, they are asking about this. And one of the project is very, very interesting to people, specifically in the sphere of tourism. People understand what are the enormous amounts of money are being paid for the coal, and they already came to understanding about the enormous amount of negative impact on the climate, and they understand that alternative energy sources are the best choices. Thank you.
Olia, you have a question? I see your hand.
Да, Оксана, можно вопрос такой? Да, я на русском задам вопрос.
I will ask it in Russian. According to your mind, what has to change? You mentioned that demand is growing. You mentioned that the prices are high. And according to your mind, what could be helpful in order to make people switch to alternative energy sources? We already say that these are alternative energy sources, not recoverable, no? And what has to change? Maybe legislation, legal base? Yeah, legal base has to change, of course, because we have a question about the cost of electric energy. And according to estimation of the World Bank, we have the lowest possible tariff on the electric power, and people are using the cheapest source based on that. So we have to think of different stimuli that would help people to switch. For example, it could be some subsidies, some discounts. And from the legal point of view, we really have to work on the changing the tariff plans. For example, we could include a system of support, for example, for green resources, so that people could have, or this networks could not only produce the green energy, but also to sell it. At the moment, our current networks operators, they are not able to sell the excess of energy into the larger network. It means that we have a big work ahead, and slowly we are moving towards solving these issues, towards pushing people to use more ecological sources. So that's it.
Thank you. There is another question in the chat. What financing options are available for renewables and home improvements?
Мгм. Мгм. Хорошо. На сегодняшний день, да, действительно есть
Yes,
много
as of today, we have a lot of programs. We have a program on supporting in setting up renewable energy sources, and also we have financial programs. Banks have such programs of financial supports. For example, I could tell you about KERSAF project that has been working since 2019 in Kyrgyzstan. This is the project that was functioning on the grant system, and it allowed the banks to set up alternative energy sources or equipment through the banks. So people were eligible for receiving a grant right after establishing such a renewable energy equipment, and it was very popular. We had a lot of people who took loans in order to participate in this program, and our country is rich with mountains, and in such mountain regions there are so many towns and villages or areas where it is very difficult to have access towards the more traditional energy sources, and this is the regions where they benefited a lot from alternative energy sources. Also, we have another project, financial products that provide loans under low percentage for establishment or setting up the equipment for usage of renewable energy sources, such as solar panels, etc. I see there is another question in the chat about
The green
tariff. We have a green tariff as it is, but it is not supported by the state. And let me repeat myself. Of today is a large problem for us to sell green energy that has been generated to the state, because our systems are not yet ready for that. That is why the green tariff is, a disputable question.
And there is another question in the chat from Georgi Abulashvili. Space heating is the biggest consumer among building technologies. Are there any steps made for introducing renewable energy in other than space heating, like solar water heaters? And if so, what are the drivers and or the barriers?
Барьеры, препятствующие внедрению возобновляемых источников энергии именно на отопление.
The barriers regarding the heating.
Да.
Если я могу, это Георгий, автор вопроса.
I'm sorry, could I restate the question? I'm asking. I'm asking about water heaters on the base of renewable energy sources. Are there specific projects or products or programs in the country that support this transition. For example, usage of solar water heaters. Or could you explain to us more specifically what are the problems and prospects for these technologies? Yes, Georgi, thank you very much for your question. The programs that I presented to you, they support all different renewable energy sources. For example, the collectors, the water heaters collectors. This is what we use quite often, specifically housing or different companies, they use solar water heating collectors. But one of the barriers within this field is the following. If we understand the principle of the solar collector, how it works, we understand that in the cold season, solar collectors wouldn't provide water heating at the necessary rate. We have solar water heaters, and we have programs that support establishment of such equipment, but the barriers are the following. Majority of the people that use such equipment in their houses, they are not familiar with the full range of variations and possibility of exploiting of this equipment. And there are some problems during exploiting or the running of this equipment period. If you ask me, I would say that we have not enough of the companies that would be able to provide maintenance for this equipment. And if people buy directly, for example, from China or from other countries, when they buy such technologies, they have to maintain them on their own. And because they might have not sufficient knowledge, they might not see the good result of usage of this equipment.
Thank you very much. And there is the last question from Olga. If there is an
Да, есть ли опыт внедрения при строительстве и эксплуатации зданий систем рекуперации воды и воздуха для нагрева?
Is there experience of introducing the systems of recuperation of water and air heating during construction and explosion of or usage of the buildings? Yes, we have a lot of such programs, and what these programs are, some of the energy efficient solutions are usage of recuperator that filtrates, cleans up the air, and heats up additionally. But I don't think that this is a good solution for winter time, because for the fall period and for the full year period, you could use such systems for filtering the air, but I wouldn't say that we could rely on such systems for sufficient heating of the spaces throughout the year. It is possible, but I think that it would be quite expensive. There is experience of usage of such technologies, but it is used mainly for smaller rooms or spaces. For example, in the project that I already told you about, we have an air recuperator equipment. For example, we were sitting in a room, we were running a conference, and this air has been taken out from this room thanks to air recuperator, and this air has been cleaned up, filtrated, and heated up by this equipment. So this equipment helped us to clean up the air and heat it up until 17 or more degrees Celsius. There is a question whether you had an office building or it was a multi-story building or it was just a private house. It was a house that is built by technologies that where we have our office, and in this office we introduced all possible technologies in order to improve the heating and energy efficiency. This is a multi-story building, but it is carcase built building. So this is 3 stores building, I would say. It is a private house, like a standalone house of 3 levels. Well, that's it. I don't see any more questions. Do you have more questions?
Thank you, Oksana. If you don't have questions, we have a question for you that we prepared for you. For answering this question it should be visible now. So the question is, what obstacles and barriers come to your mind when you think of refusal, phasing out from the fossil fuels? Sorry for my bad translation, but if you go to Menti, you can find the right one. So for answering this question, we would like you to either follow the link, which is now in the chat, or you can also use the QR code, and with your phone, you will be then sent to the question site. And just in a second, I will open the second window where we will see the answers. So just a minute. Yes, and we actually already see some answers. Of course, if it's uncomfortable for you to go to the Menti, you can also write in the chat. The strong lobby of fossil fuel business, lack of subsidies for renewable energy, limited resource. As I mentioned, if you prefer, you can also write it in the chat and then we can move it to the Menti. Lack of public awareness and negative myths about renewable energies. Infrastructure, willing of the authorities, not popular between society. Maybe last half minute for sharing. Affordability for socially vulnerable groups in remote areas. Thank you. Government support for coal industry. Absence of trusted suppliers and stability, along with low awareness. Thank you very much for sharing your opinions. For us, it's very important. As Oля mentioned in the beginning, this meeting is not only presenting, but it's also connecting experts. So having your board is very important for us. And let me move then to our next speaker. I hope that the screen will be visible in a second. Yes, and our next speaker is Alexandra Novikova, who is the managing director of Avangard Group. And she will also share the insights of the research, but also try to explain to us how not to freeze in winter while phasing out of fossil fuels and what is the status of renewable heating in the EECCA region. Alexandra, I will now stop sharing my screen so you can start sharing yours. And again, the rule is the same. If you have questions, you can either write in the chat or at the end, you can also raise your hand and speak up about your questions.
Mm-hmm. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And this is my pleasure to introduce you today our results of our recent research, which we have focused on the status quo of renewable energy development in the region. And for us, the region was slightly different That was the region that includes the Russian Federation, Eastern Europe, there is Moldova, Belarus, and Ukraine, Caucasus, which are Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia, and 5 countries of Central Asia. So it's a little bit broader, as I understand, as compared to yours. The research was conducted in the frame of the preparation of the so-called Trend 21 UNICEF report on the status quo of the matter in the year 22, and the report has been introduced as I was informed at the previous webinar, and therefore I will not go into all the details of the report as it has been already introduced, but we'll just mention for those who hasn't been there that the RAN 21 regularly. RAN 21 is an international non-governmental organization who promotes renewable energy around the world. It issues annually the report on the global status of renewables, as well as it also issues various regional reports, which are for different parts of Africa, different parts of Asia, and many others. And one of them is the report for our region, which I have just already introduced. The first version was issued in 2015, then in 2017, and the latest was issued in September, 1 month ago. The report is pretty comprehensive. It consists of about 100 pages, structured in 7 chapters. I encourage you to read the report, where you can find the details of all conclusions, as well as supporting evidence of the messages which I will deliver you now today. And the link to the report is at the last slide of my presentation. You may also check the web page of the UNICEF and RAN 21. UNICEF is supporting RAN 21 in promoting the messages in regards to renewable energy, as well as other matters. UNICEF, this is United Nations European Commission for Economic Development. Economic Commission for European Development, sorry, I forgot the abbreviation. What they also do, they promote the renewable energy uptake through various events, and there have been several events with fantastic presentations and also evidence, also with a focus on your countries. All details with conclusions and presentations are available per each event. Please check the website if you want to learn more. So what has been happening during the last 5 years, as we identified in the report? And unfortunately, to tell the truth, that there are some positive messages, but there are also some not so positive messages, and this is true for renewable heating and cooling. But I will start with one slide introducing the overall picture of what has happened in the region, attesting to the share of renewables in total final energy consumption. So before, there are 2 types of statistics used in the literature. First, this is the share of renewables in the energy supply, but most recently, the world has started rather focusing on the share of renewables in total final energy consumption, because at the end of the day, we don't energy just to supply it, we need to consume it, and therefore it is this is the indicator which better reflects the state of the status quo, the state of art. And what we have seen in the region during the last years is that the share of renewables in total final energy consumption has not changed as such. So it was about 18% in the year 2014, and it's nearly the same percentage the year before, sorry, in 2019, the year before the focus, as compared the focus year of our report. There have been, however, some positive developments in several countries, and in particular, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Ukraine, and Armenia has greatly improved the share of renewables. Why the share of renewables hasn't changed substantially As a total, there were several reasons for that. And the key among them that was that, in fact, the previous increase in the renewables were driven by the increase in hydropower, which is not growing as quick as it was before. However, what helped to sustain this share of renewables is that there were other renewable energy areas which came in place, on which I will focus later. And also, there were some other minimal factors which caused this, how to say, not changing significant picture in the region. Now, after this big picture, I want to specifically focus on renewable heating, since this is the topic of our meeting today. So please remember this is very important. So the first message is that the share of renewables in the total final energy consumption doesn't change. But now let's look at renewable heating. And these are the key messages. Well, whereas the renewable share is nearly 18%, which is pretty significant. Still, however, the progress in renewable heat has been modest if we could record it at all. And this is one of the key messages, and especially this is a critical message in the light of the fact that, as we all know, our region holds a very large potential for renewables and very large potential for renewable heating. What I will exemplify later, and this is, and the largest share of renewable heat comes from biomass, and the share of modern renewables is very low, unfortunately. However, we could already test some best practices from which we could learn. What we have to do, we have to more precisely learn the situation and address the gaps in knowledge, because the situation is evolving. But since not so many countries focus on renewable heat, even if there are success studies, we do not often know about the situation. Also, we don't have a good statistics on renewable heating, again because of the low focus of our countries on it. Oops. A second. Yes. So what has driven so far the growing share, the stable share of renewables in our region, given that the growth in hydropower is modest? This is again not renewable energy heating, but this was due to the growth of renewable power, and mostly from solar wind. And the picture illustrates here the trends of renewable energy power capacity. And please look at the yellow and gray trends, which exemplify how significantly and dramatic the trends have been during the last 5 years. Please also mention the scale. So I had to put here the logarithmic scale, otherwise I wouldn't be able to show you all the trends. So what you see that geothermal, marine, bioenergy, and hydropower were more or less stable, but this is really solar and wind, which were skyrocketing, and they grew by 10 and 7 factor, respectively, as compared to 5 years ago. So that means that this stable renewable energy share, given the low increase in hydropower, but still increase in total final energy consumption, was mostly sustained by renewable power, but not renewable heating and not renewable cooling. And this statement is exemplified on the current slide, where you see, which records the trends of the share of renewable energy and heating and cooling from between 2010 and 2020. Unfortunately, the statistics, as I mentioned, about renewable energy heating and cooling is not collected throughout our whole region. It is collected in only a few countries, and we located such statistics for 6 of them. And this is because these countries are either the members of the Energy Community Treaty, or they are observers to it. And these are the six countries of the Western Balkans. This is Georgia also, and Moldova and Ukraine. And for some of them, the statistics is already available. And as you can see, this is not that the share of renewable energy heating and cooling is growing. In some countries, it's vice versa. It's actually declining. But again, I would like to say that this is the statistics which is not well collected or poorly collected. Therefore, we have to take it with caution. But what is also very important while we are talking about the statistics, what does the share of renewable energy in heating and cooling implies? And for this, I would like to bring you to the next slide where we would try to understand so where the heating and cooling comes from and what role does it actually play in our region. If you would look at the breakdown of energy consumption, of final energy consumption in buildings, in particular in households, which are the largest share of the building sector in our countries, we see that space heating, so the demand for heating and cooling, or demand for thermal comfort, how we say it, it contributes more than half of the whole final energy consumption. So actually, it's in some countries it reaches here 70%, but I also have seen the previous statistics where it says that up to 80% depending on the location. So this is actually very critical, and not only renewable power, which is growing as we presented in the previous slide. And now let's see where this space heating where do energy carriers for space heating come from. And for example, as example, I put here Georgia, and because the statistics is vague for other countries, well, also for Georgia. But what I mean that it is not available throughout the whole region. But what we are aware of is that actually our countries still, in a large number of them, rely on biomass. And in particular, we have to say that in rural areas, in spite of the recent progress during the last decades, still a very high share of heating is delivered by biomass. The question is it sustainable biomass? Can we really say that this biomass is a renewable energy solution? Maybe in some cases, yes. I will not go into the discussion because there are dedicated webinars and studies on sustainable biomass and whether we can count it or not. But some arguments I still would like to say, and this is that if you go to rural areas into your countries, you may wish to check the heat stoves, so the stoves which are providing heat in those buildings or houses, and you will see that the majority of heat stoves have very low level of efficiency. That means that they don't only emit carbon dioxide causing climate change, but they also emit a lot of indoor pollutants such as carbon oxide, so the so-called black carbon, the product of incomplete combustion of biofuels, and therefore it first has low efficiency. Second, it causes health diseases. So therefore, what I would like to say that in our region, in many locations, still a very big share of that renewable heating and cooling that we see is actually coming from biomass. And a big share, I would say the largest share, can be counted as sustainable biomass according to opinions of some researchers. And this is the opinion also of myself, who's working for more than 20 years in the region, in spite of all numerous efforts to make this biomass commercial and sustainable. And especially big issue we see in rural areas. What you can see here also that we don't see really other renewable energy solutions. They are so negligible that I put for them a separate slide to provide the best practices, but so far this is the breakdown. So the picture which illustrates basically how we heat our homes. So how to promote sustainable heating with biofuels. There are many best practices or examples which we promote, but again, as I mentioned, we have to be careful and critical what we call sustainable, and we also have to be very much critical whether this could be recommended at the large scale. There are many projects, and so I put some of them on the slide, but you could locate many of them where I'm sure about many of them in your region, especially in Balkans. In Balkans, there have been very many with the support of, for instance, KfW Bank, the German Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and others. These are mostly projects which promote the use of biofuel, sustainable biomass in district heating systems. Also, there have been several projects which promote the use of energy efficient heat stoves in households so that biomass would be combusted in the most efficient manner. Why, as I mentioned, we have to be critical to recommend this solution on the large scale. The thing is that biomass, in order to be collected in a sustainable manner, so that we don't cut the forest, but clean it, keeping a particular share of wood for rebuilding their flora and fauna and so on. This is pretty small amount of biomass. That means that you cannot really recommend as a central solution next to in district heat plants or CHP plants in big cities, because you will not have so much of sustainable biomass if you clean the forest in a sustainable manner. It's also not possible to grow so much biomass grown in a sustainable manner for big cities or big locations. Due to these natural constraints. Also, biomass is pretty heavy and big. That means that it's difficult to transport it for large distances, given the demand. That means that there are really many constraints, and this is a solution which has to go through many assessments and considerations before we recommend it at a large scale. But again, there are many opinions, and there could be many discussions about this issue. The second solution was introduced by my colleague at the previous presentation, and in particular, she focused on solar heating. She also she introduced solar collectors or thermal collectors. But also she introduced solar photovoltaics, which could be also then connected to heating solutions, in particular heat pumps. So here the slide presents only the trends in thermal. So these are solar collectors which could provide heat for space heating and hot water heating. What I would like to say that among 18 countries in our region, these are only 3 countries which possess a sound capacity for solar heat, and these are Albania, Northern Macedonia, and the Russian Federation. But what I would like to point out that we have one best practice, one unequivocal best practice, and this is Albania, which shows that Albania is a small country, but even a small country can provide the leadership. And I would like to invite you to check the case study of this country and the progress which it has achieved. If you would compare the progress in Albania, and this is what I put on the slide on the right-hand side, you see that in terms of capacity per capita of solar collectors, it is one of the world-leading countries, nearly as much as in Spain, more than in Italy, more than the United States, and many other countries. So congratulations to Albania, and you may wish to learn its successful experience, how they did it, so that we could replicate it for other countries. As I mentioned, there are also, and as my colleague mentioned, there are many successful stories about the installation of solar photovoltaic on the roofs. And then with this, you provide not solar heating, but you provide renewable electricity, as my colleague has mentioned. You could connect it to a heating pump, and therefore the whole heating solution would be renewable. That is not presented here, but we also have numerous examples of this. This is so-called combi solutions, there could be also such collectors which are at the same time provide heat and electricity simultaneously, but I have not seen them in our region so far. The next slide, I put here the examples of geothermal heat that is produced and used in our region. What my comment is that unfortunately the situation has not changed so much as compared to the previous 5 years. So the geothermal energy for direct use and for district heat systems did not change a lot. So the locations which we have seen 5 years ago, they stayed the same without significant growth. And I put nearly all of them that are located here so that you may wish where to check best practices and also replicate them in your region. What is, however, changing, that what I would like to highlight is that we see a growing number of geothermal heat pumps throughout the whole region. In particular, I would like to highlight the success of Serbia, Georgia, and the Russian Federation with that. And you will also check how they achieved this success. So what is the challenge? Like these are one of my concluding slides. What is the challenge? Why renewable heating is not skyrocketing as compared to renewable power? And here I would like to attest to the evidence that many countries in our region have set already renewable energy targets. And you see on the figure the share of our countries which have such targets, and I broke them down by the type of target. And you see that nearly more than 3/4 of our countries have renewable electricity targets, but this is only 1/3 of our countries which has renewable heating cooling targets. Therefore, we need more commitments. Furthermore, these are only an insignificant share of countries which achieve the targets which they set. Therefore, we have to really put more commitments before we want renewable heating to play the role. Second, would like to highlight that commitments are important, targets are important, but we also need policies. And here we provide the results of the survey that we have made in our countries, so 17 countries respectively. And here you see the shares of the countries which have various renewable energy policies. And you'll see that, for instance, feed-in tariff is presented as 71% of the countries, net metering 41%, and so on, but you will scroll through these policies and you will mention that these are all policies which focus on renewable power, but rarely on renewable heating and cooling. Whereas, as my colleague mentioned, it's also very important. Mostly these are only fiscal incentives, subsidies, but they are very much insignificant as compared to those which are devoted to renewable power. Therefore, we need commitments, targets, and policies if you want success. One of the trends which I see in Europe, unfortunately, there is a title, there is a mistake in the title, sorry. It's European trend and maybe the global trend, and this is to be confirmed. I'm also a lead author of the assessment report, IPCC assessment report. IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, so this is the body of world leading scientists around the world who put the evidence about climate change. And I'm representing working group Zero Mitigation, when we assess how can we tackle the climate change. And I'm the lead also exactly of the chapter on buildings, so how we could decarbonize buildings. I was there the lead also 20 years ago and 15 years ago and, in the fourth assessment report, and now in the last one, which was issued this year. And I could see the trends which has happened in the world as well as in Europe during this time. And what I see, but this is not yet fully confirmed, and that we see that the world probably moves also to other alternative, I mean, the Northern Hemisphere. And in particular, it's so difficult and expensive to retrofit buildings, but this is unequivocally has to be done. But many countries also model and try to move to the solution that they not only retrofit buildings, which they do, but as I mentioned, they don't want to achieve retrofit rates which are needed, but they consider electrification of those energy uses which are typically not electrified. So that means that we will not use heating from typical energy carriers that we used to use, but all this will be on electricity, which will be produced from renewable energy sources. And this example we see already in Ukraine, which has followed closely the European trends and introduced the policies of the EU. And I provided here the breakdown of renewable energy heating and cooling share in the total heating and cooling. And you see the breakdown is that they, due to the introduction of these policies, they have a share of these electrified heating solutions. As I mentioned previously, that is photovoltaic, so renewable electricity connected to heat pump. Therefore, we heat with renewable electricity, and the most efficient, using the most efficient, how to say, the highest level of efficiency, the highest coefficient of performance of heating pumps. So far, as I mentioned, we have seen a breakthrough growth in renewable power from solar and solar and wind, apologies. And there have been several countries which have skyrocketing trends. These have been the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan during the last 5 years. And therefore, this solution would be one on the agenda that our countries could follow. But as I mentioned, for that, there should be renewable energy technologies, not only on the supply side, but also on the demand side. There are many factors which are pushing for these solutions, and they have been discussed, starting from energy security in the Central Asia. This is also energy, water, food nexus, and so on. And my opinion is that even so now there could be a small crisis due to the military situation in our region. Between several countries, I'm convinced that this will give a boost to actually renewable energy growth because of many reasons, and advantages of renewable energy. What I also would like to mention in the conclusion is that with all that, we should not forget about energy efficiency, and energy efficiency must come first. And my colleague said that we have to first retrofit buildings, insulate roofs, and blah blah blah. And this I cannot say more. To each countries I work with, energy efficiency must come first. Why? Because we can produce renewable electricity, renewable energy heating, renewable heating cooling, but for that we'll then have to cover the whole world with these solutions. It will not be enough if we do not reduce energy demand as much as possible, and only what is reduced addressed with the renewable solutions. And here you see the example, the comparison of the energy intensity in our countries with the OECD or European Union 27. We have significant potential for that. And the next slide presents the trends, how much energy efficiency have improved in our countries, for instance, in households and also in services. And if you can see that if some areas we do have good trend, in some, unfortunately, we don't see it in the particular buildings which are represented on the left-hand side. You see that their heating intensity reflecting the energy efficiency doesn't change over time during the last 10 years. So energy efficiency policies do not work, but they could work. And with the promotion of energy efficiency policies, we could do that working well. And I also see very good examples and commitments. And my colleague said that it's challenging to find good practices in our region, but I do see them. They may be not so. There are maybe not so many as in countries of the EU, but for instance, here on the right-hand side, I put here an example of a low energy building in Astana in Kazakhstan. This is a single-family house which consumes very small amount of energy, which is possible to address with renewable energy with renewable heat because it consumes so little energy. All this. Yeah, so as we discussed in conclusion, renewables is a good solution which brings many benefits. And it's not only important for countries which do not have any other energy carriers, which have high import dependency, but it's also important for large countries because of remote areas. I see it in Kazakhstan, I see it in the Russian Federation, many others. We need to diversify energy mixes, but we also need to ensure that remote areas get enough. And sometimes it's easier to deliver renewables energy solutions there and more often distributed, which I think now countries very much, how to say, do not get enough attention as compared to central solutions such as utility scale renewable power. This would really help to address energy poverty in those remote regions, which I see throughout all our countries. What could be done? In conclusion, the recommendations for policymakers, which I want to say that I hope that there are such here, and this is what I'm often asked for: what could be done in our countries? And I cannot say it enough. And I hope that there are also donors, so financial institutions right here, and policymakers. So what we need to build and support the domestic, so within your country's domestic production, manufacturing of renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies. You need your own solar collectors, you need your own wind turbines, you need your own, if these are too complicated, there are simple technologies. You need your own energy efficient biomass stoves, which you use in millions of your households, and that would contribute a lot to sustainable energy transition. But also, this is not the only one part that we need to focus on, and this is also many countries which I see target too much only the production of technologies. Please look at the figure where you can see the Russian Federation as compared to other countries in the world, and this is the price, the cost of photovoltaics, so solar PVs. The price is the cost for 2020 per kilowatt, and the costs are broken down into the hardware installation, soft costs. And you see that the Russian Federation has actually built their own supply chain for production, manufacturing of renewable energy technologies. But what is lacking, these are soft costs and operation maintenance. So you have to build the whole supply chain, not only production, but you also have to build the servicing of this. You need to educate staff to operate and maintain this, and you have to cover also other parts of the supply chain, so that the costs would go down. And this is about the high cost of these technologies in our region. And again, I'm talking not only about high-tech solutions, but also simple, like biomass energy efficient stoves. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention and repeat all my messages. We need to focus on heating and cooling, not only on renewable electricity. We need more commitments, targets, and policies. We need distributed solutions, especially for remote areas, because we have millions of households which are on biofuels, heated with inefficient stoves. We need to build supply chain of technologies and of renewable energy technologies throughout the whole supply chain. Supply chain is по-русски производственно-сбытовая цепочка, что правильно перевели. And we also have to consider other elements such as energy efficiency and comfort. And if we consider the electrification of heating and provision of this electricity with renewables, then we have to tackle also all other problems with the renewable power development. And this should be also not only technologies, but also energy infrastructure. Thank you so much. The link provides the link, the slide provides a link to the report. Apologies for talking too long, maybe, even so I'll cut the slides and I'm open for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are now opening the discussion. We have around 13 minutes left for the open discussion. And as mentioned before, you can either raise your hand or you can also write your questions in the chat. And there is one question from Chinara Saparova to the renewable energy experts. Is there any public policies on utilizing the renewable energy equipment? Where will all renewable energy staff go after their life cycle is over?
Oh, this is a long question. Could you please repeat it slower so I will just write it down or just point me what time was it asked? Was in the chat, right?
It's one of the last questions before before my note to you. So it's about if there are any public policies on utilizing the renewable energy equipment. And where will all the renewable energy staff go after their life cycle is over?
Okay, maybe Chinara, you could also comment, what do you mean that utilizing renewable energy equipment? Because the question could be understood in a different way. And, but while you're writing to the chat, this is the question. It depends on the country. So we have recorded or we try to research all countries of our region on policies, and I mentioned this slide with policies, but as I mentioned, there have been very few policies which focus on renewable heating and cooling. However, as a part of some of these policies, would like to focus maybe then here on renewable power, because for renewable heating, I don't recall such policy, but there have been examples in several countries. At least I remember the Russian Federation, and I think also Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken. There, you get a discount if you purchase the renewable energy technologies of domestic production. And this is a very good solution or like policy, so that you promote domestic solutions. For that, you receive a particular, I think 20 or 30% grant, if I'm not mistaken. This was a presentation of Rosatom on this, and you may check it online. Also, one note, don't promote any countries or whatsoever, just referring to some best practices which could be taken into consideration, regardless of the situation or whatever is happening. Also, this is also more such practices where we could learn this are probably in the European Union. And here we have, of course, many policies which support the utilization of renewable energy technologies, and starting from fiscal incentives and various support policies for both power and heating. In particular, given that heating solutions are under-supported as compared to renewable power, we have now much higher rates of grant support. Up to 40% of heat pumps are currently financed in Germany, so that we would achieve the scale of their production and installation, so that the prices would go down in a similar way as we did with solar PVs. Overall, there are many policies which support them from different sides. You may check our report, the particular chapter 2, where all these policies are discussed in very much detail. Also, a very interesting policy are policies for prosumers and many others. I hope I answered the question. If not, please ask.
Are there any questions, or it can be also opinions? So it's a chance for you to also share your opinions about the topics that we have discussed today, as we still have some time for more open discussion. Olia?
I kind of have a question to the audience, or to rather to everyone, also to speakers. Right now, the question of this winter that is coming is very hot, and I think that different countries prepare differently for this next winter, or maybe with kind of different reasons for that. So the EU countries are preparing because the electricity and the energy in general is more expensive now, and so they are like pushing hard on energy efficiency. They are maybe really rushing with their heat pump installation, etc., and spending a lot of money on that. In Ukraine, we are also preparing for like basically our energy infrastructure being destroyed, as partially we saw yesterday and the day before yesterday. So we are also like thinking about having our own generators, or like insulation is happening. So people are preparing for winter. I'm really curious how people in other countries are preparing right now. What are the hottest topics that you are all discussing? I mean, obviously this webinar shows also that, you know, there is an interest and people are looking into ways how to insulate, or what are the technologies available, etc. So I'm just curious about understanding what is the general situation? What are people doing? Is everyone insulating their houses, yeah, something else?
And while people will be answering, I think I understood now the question of Chinara. Chinara, I think you meant, what are you doing? How do you, what are you doing with renewable energy equipment after its lifetime? So how do you dispose? And thank you for this question. This refers to what I mentioned, the full supply chain of renewable energy technologies. So we should get know-how, not only how to produce, operate, maintain, but of course also the final stage. So what do you do at the end? And the typical recommendation is to reuse those parts which are reusable, and up to 90% of renewable energy technologies could be reused for the production of the next technologies, technologies of the same class. And this is what we refer as best practice, and this must be considered right away. And when we build the supply chain, this is why I am for building the domestic supply chains, and not only importing renewable energy technologies, and then you end up with a situation when you don't know what to do with them after 15 or 20 years of their use. Thank you. Hope I answered the question. And now.
Thank you. So we can go to the Olia's question. So what's the, and I think Olia, it's very similar to what we also have, like what is the strategy in each country? Maybe you can also write it in the Menti. Or you can also write it in the chat, or you're very welcome to unmute your microphone and just share your opinion.
Вы также можете задать вопросы мне на русском языке.
You can actually ask me in Russian if it's more convenient for you to ask me in Russian, please.
Тем временем я увидела комментарий.
And I saw a comment.
Я видела комментарий.
Sorry, Alexandra.
Is Bund, да?
Alexandra, don't forget to change the channel when you switch the language.
Okay. I don't know which channel I am.
You just choose
Russian, English. Yeah, I mentioned the comment of Mr. Severin from Friends of the Earth, Germany, about biomass. So he mentioned that biomass is produced in monocultures where no biodiversity exists at all, and you still emit CO2 burning the biomass. And I fully agree with my German colleague. This is why, as I mentioned, exactly, biomass should be assessed in very much detail to which extent it's sustainable. And we have to be really careful to recommend biomass at a large scale. I can't agree with you more. Exactly. At the same time, I see many projects supported in our region with biomass, and I'm very much concerned what issues we will end up when we gather biomass in the manner that we currently do, or grow biomass in the manner what we currently do. I'm myself from Siberia, where we have many forests and wetlands, which hold a large amount of carbon, but which also house biodiversity. And with the production of the sustainable biomass, we will lose this diversity. And I'm sure the same, a similar problem will also occur in those countries where you're from. Well, какие статьи?
It's referring to this winter. The Severin asked if the question in the Menti refers to this, like mainly to this winter, but also to the nearest future. So you can write in the chat, you can unmute yourself, or you can also write on the Menti. For example, there's already one answer that Ukraine stops to export the energy to the EU, so there is enough for their own.
Here on the comment which someone wrote, Ukraine stop export of energy so that we have enough of our own. On having enough our own, actually I'm convinced that not each and every person understands what valuable resource is energy, and it's luxury to waste it. And my argument here is, and this is what you can see in the IPCC latest report, we put it in executive summary and summary for policymakers, a technical summary. And this is what you see coming in European policies and also in your countries. This is without sufficiency. People during the energy crisis started, at least in Germany, many other countries, learned how to brush their teeth without running water. They learned that maybe they don't need to cool the air condition to 18 degrees, but maybe 25 is also fine in summer, and maybe also 20 degrees are enough in winter, but not necessarily 25. And there are many numerous examples of that. What I mean that if you introduce efficiency policies, and sufficiency is, so what is enough? And then also that could be a big contribution to the energy solution of the energy crisis. And here I don't mean to squeeze to decrease the energy consumption of the poor, those who can't afford it, but I'm sure that in each of our countries there is a population who can do better in terms of decreasing their energy consumption to a modest level. It also should go to energy efficiency policies and building codes when you plan your infrastructure and buildings. The issue is that when you have large holes which you do not populate as such, but which you heat, and that they take energy, and I can provide you many examples of that. So we have to plan the infrastructure in a way that it consumes as little energy as possible. Like, for instance, have to build compact settlements, but also when we plan our houses, we can also plan them in a way that we avoid heated areas which are not needed to heat. For instance, these are stairways, подъезды in our countries, right? In many countries of our region, these подъезды, these stairways are heated, whereas there is no need to heat them. And there are many numerous other examples. So this is why maybe our countries may have sufficient energy with their own resources, or at least a big share of it, if we will be a little bit more wise and understand the value of energy.
Thank you very much. So if there is any very, very last question or comment, so this is the moment. Otherwise, we can thank Alexandra very much for this very interesting presentation. And I think this is also the questions that we need to think in the follow-up. And as Olya mentioned, we will share the recording of the today's meeting, because there was a question about this in the chat, and the presentations are also in the recording. Maybe any last comments from the organizers that you want to share?
I would just be happy to invite everyone for the next week's last webinar so far. We will then see analyze a little bit and understand how to engage you better. That would be it. That next meeting will be quite interactive, and we will have a great trainer speaker from Belarus. And yeah, so if you are interested in the topic, if you have something to say about this topic of gender justice and climate justice, please come next
you on the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Спасибо большое. До встречи.
Thank you.